Red Bull's technical team is in chaos. Sergio and Daniel's careers are in trouble, and Ferrari strengthens its technical team with another big recruit. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo could both join Audi F1's shortlist for the F1 2025 season if they are dropped by Red Bull at the end of F1 2024. Audi, who will take over the existing Sauber team in time for F1's 2026 regulation changes, are still searching for a teammate for Nico Hülkenberg for next season after missing out on their top targets. The German manufacturer's long and public pursuit of Carlos Sainz ended in disappointment last month when the outgoing Ferrari driver confirmed that he will join Williams for F1 2025. Meanwhile, Audi also missed out on second-choice option Esteban Ocon, who decided to swap Alpine for Ferrari customers Haas. Despite signing a new 2-year contract with Red Bull in June, Perez found himself under huge pressure after a desperate run of form in the lead-up to F1's summer break. Although every indication suggested that Perez would be dropped after the recent Belgian Grand Prix, Red Bull confirmed following a crunch meeting that the 34-year-old will remain in place when the second half of the F1 2024 season begins with the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort on August 25th. Ricciardo had been regarded as one of the leading contenders to replace Perez as Verstappen's teammate for the rest of F1 2024, but the Australian has also been retained by junior team VCarb for the foreseeable future. It remains to be seen whether the situation will be revisited as the second half of F1 2024 unfolds and ahead of next season, with Red Bull facing an ever-growing threat from McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren sit just 42 points behind Red Bull with 10 races remaining, with both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri banking consistent points. A report by German publication Auto Motor und Sport has claimed that Perez and Ricciardo could be considered by Audi if they are released by Red Bull at the end of F1 2024. The four rings are thought to be open-minded over the identity of Hülkenberg's teammate following a series of high-level management changes, which resulted in former Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto being appointed in the dual role of Chief Operating and Technical Officer. Binotto's arrival was swiftly followed by the arrival of Jonathan Wheatley, who will become Audi F1 team principal by July 2025 at the latest, after a highly successful career as Red Bull's sporting director. Perez began his career with Sauber back in 2011, registering 3 podium finishes for the team before being signed as Lewis Hamilton's successor at McLaren for the 2013 season. The Mexican, who is known to bring significant sponsorship funds, also established a productive partnership with Hülkenberg over 3 seasons at Aston Martin, then Force India, from 2014, with the pair leading the team to 4th in the Constructors' Championship in 2016. Ricciardo also spent a single season as Hülkenberg's teammate at Alpine, then Renault, in 2019, outscoring the German by 17 points. Audi are also understood to have an interest in Red Bull reserve driver Liam Lawson, who impressed during a 5-race cameo for an injured Ricciardo in mid-2023. PlanetF1.com understands that a clause in Lawson's contract will allow the New Zealander to leave Red Bull entirely if he is not promoted to a permanent seat with either Red Bull Racing or VCarb for F1 2025, with Red Bull's option on the 22-year-old believed to expire next month. Long-serving advisor Helmut Marko revealed earlier this summer that Red Bull shareholders are keen to see VCarb return to its Toro Rosso roots as a team to train young drivers, raising the possibility that either Lawson or Isaac Hadjar, the Red Bull junior racer and the leader of the prestigious F2 championship, could be handed an opportunity next season. Binotto's appointment at Audi is also said to have enhanced Mick Schumacher's hopes of a return to F1, with the German's name increasingly cropping up in conversations regarding Sauber's second seat for F1 2025. Lance Stroll's place in F1 shouldn't be in question, believes 1997 F1 world champion Jacques Villeneuve, especially at this point of the 2024 season. Given his lack of headline-grabbing results, and having usually been eclipsed by his F1 world champion teammate Fernando Alonso during their time together, Lance Stroll has come in for a lot of criticism over the last 18 months. Undeservedly so, believes his compatriot Jacques Villeneuve. Last year, Fernando Alonso finished 4th in the Drivers' Championship, having scored umpteen podium finishes. Scoring 206 points to Lance Stroll's 74, the Canadian driver's contribution, which was less than half of Alonso's, theoretically cost Aston Martin 4th place in the Constructors' Championship as McLaren finished 22 points ahead. Had Aston Martin had two drivers scoring the potential shown by Alonso, even third place in the championship could be said to have been a missed target, resulting in Stroll, son of billionaire team owner Lawrence, coming in for some flack. This continued into the early part of this season, particularly following a silly incident in the Chinese Grand Prix where Stroll drove into the back of Daniel Ricciardo's V-carb under safety car conditions, resulting in Ricciardo making his feelings clear about Stroll's attitude as the Canadian failed to take responsibility for the incident. But Stroll has performed better relative to Alonso through the middle part of 2024, although the point score is still heavily skewed in Alonso's favor. The Spaniard has scored 49 points, with Stroll on 24. The pair occupy 9th and 10th in the Drivers' Championship, and there's no sense of wasted potential in the Constructors' Championship. Aston Martin is 5th, comfortably clear of V-carb, and on fewer than a third of the points of 4th-place Mercedes. Given the investment being pumped into the team by Lawrence Stroll as he bids to turn Aston Martin into a front-runner and championship contending team, the continued presence of his son on the driver lineup continues to raise eyebrows as seemingly stronger options appear available. But, according to Jacques Villeneuve, Stroll's better performances relative to Alonso is one of the factors that make him deserving of his place at the Silverstone-based squad. Lance Stroll is one of the most deserving drivers to continue racing in F1 because his dad bought the team, Villeneuve told InstantCasino.com. Of course, he deserves to be there. Aston Martin's team could have gone bankrupt if not for Lawrence Stroll, so he deserves to employ his son and keep him in F1. It's simple. Lance isn't running last and off the pace. He's matching Fernando Alonso's level. The minute Alonso re-signed with the team, he has struggled, and Lance has looked the better driver since. But while Stroll is in his position at Aston Martin with the influence of his father's ownership of the team, Villeneuve said Stroll must continue to show performance levels to justify that place, as other wealthy drivers have done. Lance knows he's in F1 because his dad has bought the team. Now he needs to show he is quick, Villeneuve said. He needs to realize there have been other millionaire drivers who had the same privileges, like Ayrton Senna, Niki Lauda, and Lando Norris. Lance is lucky, but there's nothing wrong with that, and he needs to show he can race fast. According to a recent report from Italy's Autosprint, Stroll Sr. is eyeing up a strong driver lineup and is angling to tempt Max Verstappen to the team, potentially to follow Adrian Newey across from Red Bull, if rumors are to be believed. Pairing Verstappen with Alonso, with the Spaniard on a long-term deal that will see him into the new regulations cycle, the suggestion is that Stroll would be moved aside into the Aston Martin WEC hypercar project. After starting the 2024 season with a significant cushion over rivals, Red Bull are losing ground. Improvements from McLaren and Mercedes have drastically altered Red Bull's previously comfortable situation at the front of the pack. Perhaps of greater concern for Red Bull is the risk of falling further behind in the second half of the year. Throughout last year, Red Bull made steady gains with their upgrades. However, they also benefited from the struggles of their traditional rivals, Mercedes and Ferrari. This is no longer the case, with both teams addressing their underlying issues over winter to put themselves in a position to win races this year. Mercedes have taken particularly huge strides, finally understanding a set of regulations that have frustrated them so greatly. Updates to the W15 have unlocked significant lap time this year, with wind tunnel data finally corresponding to the track. James Allison's technical team are on the rise, generating impressive momentum, given that their aerodynamic concept is relatively new. An opposite phenomenon is taking place at Red Bull, whose latest upgrades to the RB20 did not work as intended. Whilst providing a few aerodynamic gains, the most recent innovations from Milton Keynes have fallen short. Red Bull's technical director, Pierre Wash, has spoken candidly about this. "We improved compared to last year, without a doubt," he told Autosport. "But we didn't deliver what we expected in some areas. Especially in the high-speed corners, we expected a little bit more than we have. Without thinking about the competitiveness of the car, so just based on our own references, we expected a little bit more with our tools." Wash also admitted that Red Bull expected other teams to close the gap. If anything, the Austrian squad anticipated their advantage would be eroded sooner. Regardless of when Red Bull forecasted their advantage would dissipate, this is the reality they must face. A major concern for the reigning champions is that they have already introduced a series of large update packages. Other top teams, and McLaren in particular, still have substantial updates in the pipeline. Given the trajectories of F1's front-running teams, the pecking order could continue to evolve. These changes might not be good news for Red Bull, whose position in the championship is increasingly at risk. A lot will also depend upon Sergio Perez, who must improve if the Austrian team want to defend the F1 championship. Loic Serra is poised to become Ferrari's new technical director, following his arrival from Mercedes later in the F1 2024 season, it has been claimed. And Ferrari has ruled out a move for former Mercedes tech boss Mike Elliott, with team principal Fred Vasseur showing no interest in the engineer behind the troubled zero-pod car concept of 2022 to 23. Ferrari has been on the lookout for a new technical director, since it was announced last month that Enrico Cardile will join Aston Martin for the F1 2025 season. Vasseur himself has been holding the role on an interim basis since Cardile's departure was confirmed, with the Frenchman balancing the role with his duties as team principal. Ferrari announced a double signing from Mercedes in May, with Serra and Jerome D'Ambrosio, the former Marussia and Lotus Renault F1 driver, set to start in October as head of chassis performance engineering and deputy team principal, respectively. Serra was originally intended to report directly to Cardile, covering areas spanning track engineering, aero development, aero operations, and vehicle performance. With Cardile moving on since his appointment was announced, however, Italian publication Formula 1 Uno reports that Serra is expected to combine the roles of head of chassis and technical director, directly replacing the soon-to-be Aston Martin man. Serra will work alongside Diego Tondi, who has been serving as head of aerodynamics this year after reportedly refusing to follow Cardile to Aston Martin. The report claims that Vasseur's technical structure at Ferrari is likely to mirror that deployed by McLaren, with up to 3 different technical directors, Serra, Tondi, and chief project engineer Fabio Montecchi, taking responsibility for different areas of the car. Although Elliott remains out of work since leaving with Mercedes last year, it is said that the former Silver Arrows engineer is not on Ferrari's radar. The reports of Serra's appointment to the role of technical director is likely to come as good news to Lewis Hamilton's marquee signing for the F1 2025 season. Reports last year claimed that Serra had shared Hamilton's reservations over the zero-pod concept pursued by Elliott's technical team at Mercedes in the early years of the ground effect era, with the 7-time world champion suffering 2 consecutive winless seasons in 2022 and 2023. Elliott swapped roles with James Allison following a poor start to last season before parting company with Mercedes in October. Serra's move to Ferrari came after the Scuderia failed in multiple approaches for Red Bull technical director Pierre Wascha, with Vasseur and his predecessor Mattia Binotto, Ferrari team boss between 2019 and 2022, both attempting to sign the Frenchman at various points. It is claimed that Red Bull team principal Christian Horner did everything to keep Wascha, repeatedly rewarding him with new contracts at the drop of a hat to resist Ferrari's attempts to sign him. Serra is known to be a close associate of Wascha, with the pair working together at both Michelin and BMW Sauber before rising to prominence at Mercedes and Red Bull, respectively. Not for the first time, Max Verstappen has spoken of loyalty to Red Bull when asked about his Formula 1 future, but that doesn't mean he's not considering F1 2026 ahead of the big rule changes. Although Verstappen has a long-term contract with Red Bull, one that runs through to the end of the F1 2028 championship, earlier this year he was linked to Mercedes, while more recently Aston Martin are said to have entered the fray. The Silverstone-based team, which has reportedly already procured the services of longtime Red Bull design guru Adrian Newey, are sparing no expense to entice Verstappen with an eye on F1 2026. That's the year Formula 1 will not only put new cars on the track, but also new power units, potentially shaking up the pecking order and ending Red Bull's reign. Asked about the prospects of that, Verstappen admitted to Formula 2 that he expects things will be different for sure. I would have to say that in some places the cars might be a little bit slower in terms of lap times, but I would also have to say that when new rules come in, it's always difficult to predict whether the impact will be positive or negative. Personally, I prefer to take a middle position and say, let's wait and see what happens. I was the same way with the current rules, watching. Is this going to be good? Is this going to be bad? Fortunately for me, it worked out very well as the team became competitive, but with the new rules, you really never know. Stepping up to Red Bull's senior team in 2016, Verstappen toiled through the latter Renault years before Red Bull made the call to swap to Honda in 2019, doing so despite the Japanese manufacturer's difficult years with McLaren. He won his first of 3 world titles behind the wheel of a Honda-powered RB16B in 2021. But with F1 on the cusp of a new era, one in which Aston Martin will run Honda engines, Mercedes could steal a march as they did in 2014, and Red Bull will design their own engine for the first time. Verstappen has once again spoken of his mutual loyalty with Red Bull Racing. "I think the most important thing is not to make decisions based on emotion, because that will always get you back," he said. "I'm a patient person myself. I don't overworry things. Of course, it means a lot, and I appreciate the fact that I have a very long history with the team. Loyalty is very important, and I think it is not always there in F1. Fortunately, in my case, it is there, and I think it is mutual for us. Key people stay with the team, and now we have our own engine project. How is it going? I'm very confident, but we have to be realistic. We have to fight against people who have been making engines for over 100 years. They have a lot of experience, but of course we have also signed a lot of people." He added, "I'm the same as with the new rules. I prefer to take a middle ground. I don't want to be too positive or too negative. I stay in the middle. You have to be patient. A lot of things have to stay together or come together, and I also have to think about the future. What will happen after 2026? So I am patient." Carlos Sainz has taken a huge risk by agreeing to a multi-year deal with Williams. After months of speculation, the Spaniard is committed to a team building a strictly long-term project. Because of this, Sainz should be pragmatic about what can be achieved next year. James Vowles has generated immense excitement about the Williams project since becoming team principal. The former Mercedes strategist has shown a clear vision for the Grove-based operation. Thanks to consistent investment from owners, Doralton Capital, Williams are making much-needed improvements to their infrastructure. In combination with the acquisition of top personnel, Vowles is confident Williams can progress. However, the British engineer's hopes are predominantly on 2026 and 2027, rather than the next 18 months. Vowles made this clear when the Carlos Sainz deal was announced. "When people ask me, are you happy or unhappy with 2024, I don't care. I hate to say it, but it doesn't mean anything for me. I love scoring points in Monaco, but I'm really excited by what we have coming up in 2025, 2026, and 2027, as that's where we're investing our time and resources." In many ways, next year will be a transitional season for Sainz. After missing out on his ideal destinations, Red Bull and Mercedes, Sainz must brace himself for the midfield scrap. This adjustment will not be an easy one, given Sainz has won races every year since 2022. However, the immediate future is not the real test of whether Williams was the correct choice for the future. Instead, the team's performance when the new 2026 regulations will be the deciding factor. As Aston Martin and McLaren have shown, being a customer team is not a limiting factor in modern F1. Considering that Mercedes are expected to produce a top-quality engine in 2026, Williams should have a good foundation. The factory in Grove are already prioritizing development for 2026. James Vowles' aim for next season is to produce a reasonable car, but nothing more. It is not until the new regulations arrive that his project will be heavily scrutinized. This is also when Carlos Sainz can more clearly assess the team's chances of becoming frontrunners. Thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you in the next one.